Hi, everybody. I'm Sivan. I'm so excited to be here with you guys today. I am a product support manager here at Ivy and am really excited to just navigate through a couple of the new features that we have just released this week, go through any questions that you have, and just help you make the most out of these really awesome new features. So I'm going to wait for a couple more people to trickle in and just make sure that we have everybody all set. My colleague Tara will be helping me manage some of the questions that come in. I will be taking breaks to answer them, but if I don't get to any, I will try to get to them at the end of the session. And if not, you can always reach out to your dedicated account manager by emailing support@ivy.co and asking any questions that you do have. So with that, let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to cover today. Oh, and if you also need to tune out at any point for any reason, you will be able to watch a replay of this. I will send a link for you to do so. Really just want to make sure that everybody who's able to tune in is here. So with that, today we're going to be covering a couple of the new features that just rolled out really recently, and which we haven't had a chance to do a dedicated webinar for. So as you may or may not know, I host these every few weeks on Friday, really just education for our community, trying to make sure that you know how to take advantage of Ivy for your own business. So a couple of the things that we're going to cover today. The first are recent accounting enhancements that we have released. Specifically, this refers to progressive invoicing and merging POs. And we'll go through that whole process, how it works, how to take advantage of it, what to do. The second thing is that we just added an expense tracker to our time billing function. And this is something that eventually you'll be able to access on mobile as well. But right now, it's on the desktop version, and it is really amazing because this is something that I've envisioned for a long time, and I'm really happy that it's finally come to fruition. And lastly, we just released the V2 version of our mobile app. So a couple of you early adopters may have had a chance to see the beta version, which was simply time tracking and task management. And today, or this week on Tuesday, we released the new version, which has so many more functions. What I'm going to do today is just go through a couple slides talking about some highlights of the mobile app. But next month, on November 16th, we will have a dedicated mobile app webinar where I will actually go through the app and go through all the different functionalities. Everything, by the way, that we're going to be talking about right now, we have dedicated articles in our help center, help.ivy.co, where you can see graphics, even a video for our mobile app, really a step-by-step guide on how to use all of these new features. So if you just need a quick reference, that's going to be your best bet. So let us start with progressive invoicing and merging POs, and then we'll get to invoicing in just a second. Okay, so I'm going to go into my Ivy app because in order to start with progressive invoicing, it's really important to remember a couple of key tenets that I love to talk about when talking about best practices in Ivy. So the first thing that is going to be the core function to successfully progressively invoicing is starting with a proposal. And if you've tuned into my past webinars, you will know how often I recommend starting with a proposal. But for progressive invoicing to actually take effect, you need to turn the function on in your project settings or in your account settings. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to go into my account, and then I will click on the settings tab. And only the account administrator will have access to the settings tab. This is company-wide settings, so only the admin, the manager of the Ivy account will have access to this. And you'll see right down here, project settings. asking allow proposals to be invoiced progressively. If you do want progressive invoicing enabled, you will simply need to turn this function on. By default, it is off. Okay? So that's the first step. Now, as we talked about, I am going to start with a proposal. And what's so amazing about starting with a proposal in general, even if you're not going to be collecting payment on it, or it's just a really amazing place for you to ideate and to get all of your ideas on paper and send it to your client for approval. I more specifically recommend taking deposits on proposals just to collect as much money as you can up front and protect yourself. But I understand that some people want to just start with approval, no problem, whatever works for you. But what I am doing is I'm going to a project that I've already created called Madison Park, and I'm toggling over to the proposals tab. And the reason why I'm starting with the proposal is because in order to invoice progressively, there needs to be a starting point here. So proposals is the obvious place to start. So all I did was click on create new proposals, and I'm going to add a couple different items here. So I'll start with this rug right over here. I'm going to pull some items from my product library. I don't want to go through the whole flow of adding items to the product library, but you can see many past webinars where I talk about that flow. And in this case, I'm going to do a little comparison of 3 different rugs from 3 different price points from 3 different vendors. So you may or may not know, I don't want to get too much into some specific tricks, but I can't help myself. So I'm going to, just one of my favorite tricks here is the alias title for those of you that don't know. If you ever want to change the name of a product as it appears to your client, you can do so right over here on the line item. So I could just call this rug, and internally I'll still know the actual product name, but my client will just see rug. Of course, the markup is hidden from your clients unless you want them to see it. You can associate a shipping cost, mark it as taxable, and assign each of these to a room. So that alias title is just one that you may or may not know about, which is one of my favorites. So we're talking about progressive invoicing. So what does that mean? First of all, as I mentioned earlier, just one of my personal best practices recommendations is to request a 100% deposit upfront on the proposal, because the core tenet here is that you want to protect yourself. You don't want to be paying out of pocket for any client expenses. You want to be able to collect that money. It's subject to change, whatever it is, you collect it, you hold on to it, and then you pay out your vendors without pulling out of your own pockets. So what's really cool here, you can simply, I'm going to scroll in over here. You can see the request deposit, and I'm going to select deposit percentage and just call it a 100% deposit. This little eyeball button, for those of you that don't know, again, I can't help myself with these tricks. I just hope that you know about these things just in case you don't. This little eyeball button is great because it allows you to see the subtotal, the total markup that you are charging, and if there is a shipping cost and a shipping markup, you can see that directly here on the document. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to save this proposal. And we are just highlighting the new features, so I'm not going to go through the whole process of sending this to my client, getting approval or denial or whatnot. I'm just going to turn on, I'm just going to collect a payment here just for these example purposes. So what I'm going to do, my default settings in this project is to show markup. I'm going to disable that. Okay. So now I have these 3 rugs, and let me just collect a payment true to my best practice recommendations. And of course, progressive invoicing will work if you don't take payments on proposals, if you're just getting approval only. It's the same idea, but I just want to highlight one specific note here for progressive invoicing. Okay, so I now have this proposal that is fully paid. My client, in a dream world, they paid me 100% deposit the same day I sent it. And what I would like to do here is start an invoice. And the whole concept of progressive invoicing originates from the fact that, you know, an invoice has legal accounting implications, meaning a proposal that a proposal doesn't. So an invoice, you really want that turnaround between invoice creation and invoice payment to be really fast. And you don't want to manipulate the invoice as much. Like a proposal, you could change it, you could change prices, you could change this, whatever it is, quantity. An invoice, once you create it and once you pay it, you have like tax implications of money that you owe to the government according to that invoice. So what I would always recommend doing is invoice when you're ready. And ready, it means different things to different people. So it's really just a matter of what works for your business. I know some designers will only invoice at the end of a project once everything's been installed. Other designers will create the invoice once they've received confirmation from their vendor that an item is set to ship. It's totally up to you, but the whole point with progressive invoicing is that items on a proposal may be ready at different times. So you don't want to necessarily create an invoice for an item whose lead time is 6 months at the same time that you're invoicing for an item which lead time is 4 weeks. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's really just about being able to invoice items as they come in, as you are ready to invoice, totally up to you. So because I turned on progressive invoicing on this project or on my company settings, all I need to do here is click Start Invoice. And this pop-up appears, which is the tenet of progressive invoicing. This will only display items that have been approved. So if you did send that proposal and your client declined an item, they will not be included in this pop-up. And here you're able to see the different items that were approved from this proposal. In this case, all 3 were. But let's say this one is the one that is ready to be invoiced. All I need to do here is click on this check mark. And because we collected a payment on this proposal, you'll see at the bottom that I could actually transfer a specific dollar amount from the proposal to the invoice. And that's really cool. And that's something that was a big improvement because previously, anytime you create a proposal and then convert it to an invoice, the dollars will transfer over, the payments will transfer over from the proposal to the invoice automatically. Here you can select exactly how much is actually transferring over. So I have no reason here not to transfer over the full amount. All I'm going to do is invoice this one item. If I wanted to invoice 2, I would just select 2. If I want to invoice all, I could just click that button. Again, these example purposes, I'm just taking this middle one. And now I'm going to click continue. And we're about to be brought to a screen which will look exactly like our edit mode of a proposal, except this time it's an invoice. And what's amazing with starting with the proposal and then moving to the invoice is that things change. Once we actually hear back from our vendor, we'll maybe have a better idea on what the shipping is. So I can add it right over here. I can make any changes that I need to on this invoice. I'm creating it now. I could change my payment terms. This is, again, totally up to you. And again, you'll see that little eyeball down here and see the cost breakdown as it pertains to this item. And what's interesting is that here, we no longer have the opportunity to request a deposit because we already received a full deposit on the connected proposal. Okay, I just lost my mouse, 1 second. Okay, and now we're going to click Save. So with this invoice, that's how easy progressive invoicing is. You start with a proposal, You select the items that you want to transfer over, and you create an invoice for those items. So you'll see over here a couple of things that I want to point out. First and foremost, this chain link at the top shows you the connected proposal and its status. So I can easily access that original proposal directly from this invoice. I will also see over here that the payment that I originally collected for this item and transferred over appears right over here. And if you'll remember, I just added a shipping cost for $150, which is now the outstanding balance. So I can reissue this to my client and collect that remaining balance. Again, so that's how easy progressive invoicing is. I will go back to my original proposal. Let's do it one more time for just to reiterate into our minds. And so when I go back over here, by the way, into my proposal, I accessed it just by clicking the chain link button and accessing it directly there. You'll see over here at the top, it tells me exactly how many of these items have been invoiced, and I could see the collected invoice and the value of that invoice. So now I'm just going to create another invoice 2 weeks later, let's say, for the rest of the items. All I need to do is click Start Invoice. I'm going to create one for both of these items, take the full outstanding balance that is remaining, and we will have our second invoice. So that's exactly the point of progressive invoicing, is starting with one document and creating many different invoices from that one document. They are all connected and just help you stay that much more organized. So you'll see right over here, once again, we have our second invoice. If I were to try to go back to that original proposal, you'll see that now all the payments have transferred over. There's no remaining balance, and all 3 items have been invoiced. So it's that easy for progressive invoicing. And what I would love to see is if anybody has any questions about progressive invoicing before we move on to the next topic. So Tara, if there are any questions that came in about progressive invoicing, I see right over here, there is one from Joy. Does it create a new number for the invoice? Yes, it does. Anytime you create a document in Ivy, it will have a new number, and it's actually sequential. So, and it's across the entire company. So in this case, we started with proposal number 10169, and then we see right over here 10170, and in sequential order 10171. Again, we'll also see the status of those. Sarah is asking, when you progressively invoice all rugs separately, does it then create 3 invoices when you do them all at separate times, or does it add it to your first invoice? It will create 3 different invoices if you were to progressively invoice them separately. So I think that was a similar question to what Joy was asking of, will it create a new document? Yes, so it will create a new invoice every time, which again, it's about invoicing when you're ready, because an invoice has legal implications accounting wise, and you may not want to pay for an item if it's not going to be shipped for 6 months, type of thing. Jeanne, what are the circumstances, if any, under which you would not want to do progressive invoicing? I'm a big proponent of progressive invoicing, so it's totally up to whatever practices you want. I would say that if you are creating your proposals for, let's say, services, maybe, you might want to invoice those all at once. If you're, for example, getting reimbursed for accessories, like retail accessories that you just, paid, that would be something that you're probably not going to progressively invoice. You're just going to go straight to invoicing. It's totally up to you, but I love progressive invoicing, so I may be not the best person to ask because I'm too much of a proponent for it. Okay, great. So I have one more question from Jason, and then I'm going to move on. Um, so Jason is asking, what if we want to do the opposite and combine multiple invoices into one? At this time, that is not possible. What we will be working on eventually, and Helena, our director of product, can speak more to this when you speak to her next. We will be working on the ability to combine. I believe the idea was to do like service invoices, uh, combining them, but it gets a little bit trickier. So what we did start with is merging POs, which is a perfect segue to what I'm about to go through, which is exactly that, merging POs. That was kind of the first step in terms of merging documents that we wanted to go through. So let me move on to there. Thank you, Jason, for the segue. So merging POs is really cool because this is something that just as right now we just created, you know what, let me take a step back and let me just create a PO just to go through the entire flow. So when you're creating your POs, one of the feedbacks that we had received from different IV members, and clearly your feedback is super important to us because this is what builds IV out. So keep your feedback coming, keep your suggestions coming. But one of the feedback that we had received was that I remember speaking with a designer and she was like, okay, I have 4 POs for Vanguard. They are going to kill me if I send them 4 individual POs. Like, they're not going to like that. And we're like, you know what? You're right. So what we've done is we've created the ability to merge unpaid POs in the same project for the same vendor. So all I need to do to create a PO in general is from my invoice or from my proposal, click on the button in the top right-hand corner and click Create Purchase Order. I'll see right over here, my vendors are automatically associated with my items, and I'll click Continue. And water break. So again, to merge your POs, you will be in one project. We can't merge POs across different projects because Ivy is a project-based system. You want to understand the money flowing in and out as it pertains to a specific project. And it will also have to be an unpaid purchase order from the same vendor. So one easy way to do this is to sort your vendors by name, because right now I could see that I have a couple different vendors here. And if I sort it, it's better. I'm better able to see the different POs that I have for my vendors. And I can also see the statuses kind of grouped together here. So just to give you an example of how this works and how it doesn't work. If I have this paid purchase order for Restoration Hardware, when I go to click on it, you'll see that the option to merge POs is not available. First of all, I only have one PO for Restoration Hardware, and second of all, it's paid, so this won't work. But when I go to a PO or a vendor like Loloy or a vendor like the Citizenry, I'll see the option to merge POs right over here. So all I need to do is click Merge POs. And you'll see a similar pop-up as to what we saw when we were progressively invoicing. You'll see the specifications as well of items that you can merge. Purchase orders below are open or sent and do not have any applied payments. Once you merge the POs, there's no going back. You cannot undo a merge. All items for that PO, any attachments that you have, will all be combined onto the new combined PO that you create. What's really cool here, anytime you see the little eyeball button, click on it, it gives you a little sneak peek of what's on there. So you could just make sure without even having to open those specific POs that this is exactly what you want to do. You see I'm a fan of this specific chair. I'm ordering it twice. So what I'm going to do is merge all of my POs for the Citizenry. Again, I'm in this one project. They are all open. They are unpaid. I'm going to merge them all together. And what you'll see here is now I have one PO for the Citizenry. and it is my PO from which I originated the merge request. So I'll open it up right here, and there you go. If I had had any attachments, they would have transferred over here. And now my vendor will hate me just a little bit less because I'm sending them one PO for this project specifically. So that was fun. Let's do that again. Again, I'm going to sort this by vendor. I am going to do this one for Cherish. I think I have the rug twice over here again. So I'm just going to click merge POs. And you'll see that whatever document I requested the merge, that is going to be the actual new document number. So PO 10031 and PO 10069 are basically going to no longer exist. They will all live under PO 10047. Okay, perfect. I have my one PO for Cherish. I have my rug that I love on there twice. And that's it. Oh, what's really cool here, earlier we were talking about connected documents. So here you'll see that even the connected documents, the documents that these POs originated from, whether it was a proposal or invoice, they all also combine. So you could see that this purchase order is connected to several different proposals and invoices. In this case, this is probably the only one that is worrisome because it is the only one that is actually open. So I could just make sure that I paid, or that my client paid me for that one. But that's how easy it is. That's it. That's merging POs. It's something hopefully to make your life a little bit easier. You can always download this as a PDF if you prefer not to send it via email. And while we're on the POs, I, again, cannot help myself by giving those recommended best practices. I would always recommend to upload as an attachment to this purchase order your vendor invoice. So you want your PO and IV and your vendor invoice from your vendor to actually match identically. I would just keep a record of it here in one place, upload your vendor invoice right over here. Okay, any questions on merging POs before we move on? Julie is asking, why is it that we can't merge paid POs? That's a great question. I think it's simply because when it comes to payments, there is a little bit more complexity in terms of when that payment was made. I can't answer that question as well as I would like to, actually, but that's right now. It's just open POs, I think, for the ease of knowing that the status is all the same. No items have been paid. So I think it's just for the ease on the accounting side. Mary Ann Kelly is asking, can you change the quantity when you have two of something? On the PO, I assume is what you're asking. And yes, totally. You would just go into edit mode. You can always, if you needed to, delete an item and then change the quantity right over here. So here, for example, I can hit delete. It's telling me that it's connected to two different documents. Yes, I do. I want to remove it, and I could just change the quantity right over here instead. Great question. Let's see what else. So Maya is asking, when merging, will the system keep the attachments associated with each item, or will I need to make sure that my attachments are clearly labeled for each item? Would hate for my vendor to get directions and details mixed up. Great question. So when you add an attachment to Ivy, it's associated with a specific document, not with an item. So your attachments from your other POs would, when merged, all be transferred over to the new PO. So they are associated with that new purchase order document. So for that reason, you would want them to be clearly labeled and if there are any specific directions associated with an individual item, you would just want to, make that known. You can always, when you add an attachment, for example, let me add, for example, a receipt that I have over here. You can always edit the name and say, this is for the blue vintage Moroccan rug instructions, for example. You can always rename it so that it's more clear. And then Josh is asking, if I were to change the price of an item on a proposal, will this change carry over to the already generated invoice or purchase order? It will not. So this goes back to my suggested best practices. I have if I do say so myself, one of my favorite webinars that I've ever hosted was setting yourself up for success on Ivy, which goes through the process of how you should work, like what I think would make the most sense for most designers to work out of. So my suggested workflow on Ivy is to start with a proposal, create your PO. Once you have that finalized price from your vendor, go back to the proposal, update it. Again, the proposals are the manipulated documents, the ones that you can change, and then create your finalized invoice to issue to your client. I know that we are working on a 360 product view feature, which will launch in several months, probably in 2019. But I imagine that might have some implications as to updating it just in one place rather than all places. Okay, so I am going to move on to the next topic. I don't want to make this too long of a webinar because you are all very busy and I'm sure have better things to do than hear me speak, but I'm happy that you're here. So expenses. Expenses are amazing. It's going to help you deal with your accounting, take more control, have a better organization, and understand and make sure that you're tracking your revenue. So I'm going to go through this in the app, but just on screen. Expense tracking is directly tied to time tracking. It's actually built into the same portal. So before you used to see time billing, now it says time and expenses. And the reason being is that the flow of billing a expense is very similar to the flow of billing for your time. So if you're already familiar with the time tracking, it's really easy to understand how the expense tracking works. The best part is you can add attachments directly here if you have a photo of a receipt, for example, and this attachment will transfer over to the invoice. And you'll see that right over here. We'll go through this in just a second together. Okay, so the first thing to note about expenses, it all boils down to categories. Let me just take a sip. So for those of you that integrate with QuickBooks Online, and even if you don't, it's really important to know about Ivy's categories, because the categories are the way that you can understand exactly how much money is flowing in and out of your projects, in and out of Ivy, by category. So what I'm doing is I'm going to go to my product library here in Ivy, and I'm going to click on Manage Categories. And you'll see over here that Ivy has default categories associated with services and with products. So when thinking about it, products and services are the big picture categories, and then there are subcategories for each. For example, for products, you'll have furniture, fabric, lighting, floor covering, window, wall. For services, you have labor, shipping, designer fee, expense, time track, other. This is an opportunity for you to get as specific as you need to be. But the reason why I'm talking about categories here is because expense tracking is specifically related to, what would you expect? The expense category. So this is actually where you're going to want to start if you do have expenses, like categories of expenses that you frequently charge for. For example, if you charge for travel and you have a specific mileage cost, like 60 cents a mile, you can set that as a travel service and categorize it as an expense. And you could do the same thing if you can create a very generic expense category, just to like a reimbursable expenses category. You can get as specific or as vague as you need to be. If it's something that you will repeatedly be tracking and billing, you may want to just create a service called travel, as I have over here. So what I'm going to do here is add a new service. This one I'm going to call mileage. I'm going to categorize this as expense and add my description. So let's say this is 60 cents, 60 cents a mile for travel to and from site. Again, over here, I'm going to do 60 cents and save it. Because this is categorized as an expense, I will be able to track this in my expense tracker. So let's see an example of this. I'm going to go to the time and expense section right over here. Specifically, I'm going to work out of the Madison Park project. All I need to do here is select my my project that I want to create an expense for, toggle over to expenses. And if this is something that I'm billing for myself or for another designer on the team, I could do so right over here. I happen to be billing this directly for myself. And my service is mileage. Again, I have 3 different services here that are categorized as expenses, reimbursable expenses, travel. I'm going to just go ahead and stick with mileage. If you need to create a new one on the spot, you can just do so by clicking this little plus button, and you'll see that similar category or service creator pop up. Here, I have my default rate associated with this service. I could change the date if I'm retroactively billing or proactively billing, I could do so right over here. And I'm going to add the quantity. So here, let me just call this travel to and from site visit for GC meeting. I can also add any attachments if I have a receipt that I want to include. I could do so right over here. And if I'm adding multiple expenses at once, I could just click save and new, and it will go ahead and pop up again. Here, I'm just going to click save. I'm going to mark them as billable, and I'm brought to my timesheet. So what I'd like to do is, let's say I've updated, I've received this, and before I actually bill my client for it, I want to say, you know what, this was actually 30 miles because this happened, you know, we changed, I went another 5 miles each way. I'm going to save it right here. And this is now my time billing and expense tracker for this project. And you'll see both the different types. This is time, and then this is expense. I can also filter through to see just my expenses or just my time. And you'll also notice that none of these have been invoiced yet. So all I need to do here is select the items for which I would like to create an invoice. So it's really that easy. All you need to do is add the different expenses to track, and then create an invoice for these different expenses. So all I'm going to do here is click select to generate my invoice, and I can generate it right over here at the top. For those of you that use time billing, this is really familiar. It's the same exact flow. You'll see right over here all of the different line items, all of the different costs associated with my expenses. And I can always change the titles here, whatever I need to do, and save this. And what's great, you'll see right over here the 2 attachments that I had included with my expenses. also carried over right over to the invoice. So again, if you have those receipts, you can upload them directly to the attachment and they will directly as an attachment and they will transfer over to the invoice. So that's really how easy it is to track your expenses. One thing that I do want to show you while I'm here that some people may not know about is the grouping feature, because the grouping feature might be more specifically associated with products and custom items. But what's great here is if you have a long time billing invoice or a long expenses invoice and it's kind of too nitty gritty to show your client and you just want to hand them one invoice that's easy to read, say these are the expenses, here are the receipts associated with the cost. What you can do is you can group all of the items together. So for me to do that, I just need to toggle over to manage mode. And all I need to do is select the different items that I would like to group. So let's say I would like to select all of these. I'm just selecting multiple by clicking shift. And once that happens, I just click to group the items together. I can call this reimbursable expenses. I could just say expenses related to site visit and save it. And what's amazing is you can let your clients see the group contents. You can let them see the nitty gritty if you want to. If not, then they will just see the one line item for all of the different items that you group together. Okay? You could send this off to your client. Again, same thing. I don't want to waste your time. This is just about the new features. So with that, I will turn to any questions about tracking your expenses on Ivy. Jan is asking, how many categories can you add? Jan, the options are limitless. You can add as many categories as you want to. You want to be smart about it because what's important is that if you want to, I would suggest that you make these categories more general, like furniture, unless you specifically buy and sell a lot of pillows or create your own pillows and you want to specifically track your income from your money in and money out from this pillow creation part of your business. Otherwise, if not, I would just say like track accessories instead. You can really get as specific as you need to be, but the defaults are in there for a reason. Okay. Emily is asking, is there a way to scan receipts on the app for reimbursable expenses? So the ability to add expenses to the mobile app will be coming really soon. Right now, you can add attachments to the mobile app, and those attachments will be uploaded to your project itself. So we're almost there. But yeah, you would be able to see any receipts on the go right over here in the attachment section that you add to the app. Jessica. Jessica's asking, can you track expenses that are not billable to a client, or is this not what it is set up for? Jessica, I want to ask a follow-up question. Are you talking about like overhead expenses for your business, or are you just talking about project related, not billable? Because if it's project related, not billable, absolutely. What you can do is you can simply mark the items as not billable, and then not, just as we have over here, for example, like in our time track, when you add a new expense, if this is something that you just want to, if you just want to keep track of it and say, I'm not going to be billing my client for this, just simply mark it as not billable for you to track internally. It's the same idea as you not billing a flat fee, but tracking your hours so you know where your time is being spent. Same thing here. You don't want those expenses, even though they might be $5 here, $5 there, falling through the cracks. You want to understand exactly how much money you are paying or expensing in a project, even if you're not billing it. So yes, so the best way to do this would be to track them as not billable. And you said yes, and I can't remember, and I can't tell if that was to overhead expenses or just not billing it to a client. So we'll see if you can get back to me about that. But while we're on the topic, I assume you would want to know about overhead expenses. The best way to track overhead expenses is to create a specific administrative project And when you think about it, just taking a step back, big picture, what is an expense? How do you track an expense in Ivy? Your money coming in is via an invoice, and your money going out is via a purchase order. And when we're talking expenses for your business, whether that's rent, toilet paper, computer supplies, whatever it is, those are all money out. That's not money that you're going to be receiving and depositing into your account. That's money that you're paying out. So what you would want to do to track your overhead expenses, I would simply create a new project called Sivan's Design Admin and simply create purchase orders for each of those expenses. And what you'll see is you'll see a net loss on that project because there's no money coming in. It's all money going out. But that will be the best way for you to track any money that you are specifically spending overhead on your business. Of course, because you can add attachments to your POs, you can store your receipts, same thing. That's going to be the best way for you to actually track overhead expenses. All right, last thing that I want to talk about. Okay, and oh, sorry, Caitlin asked a really good question. Is it possible to remove the receipts if you don't want them being sent to your client? Absolutely. You can always edit or remove the attachments. Whoops, I opened it right over here, just by hovering over and clicking the X button. And then you'll see that it is, oops, 1 second. Okay, so what you would have to do, we're learning together, this is a new feature. What you would have to do is remove the receipt from the expense itself. But that's a really good idea in terms of just being able to remove it on the invoice. That is something I will talk directly to our product team about. That's a great question, Caitlin. Okay, last thing I want to talk about is the mobile app. So I'm not going to be doing a demo of it on my phone. That is something that we will be hosting on November 16th, a full dedicated mobile app webinar. But I just want to go through a couple of the highlights of the mobile app. So this just came out on Tuesday and is available for iOS iPhones and in the Google Play Store for Android devices. If you go to our help center, you can find over there that it says, if you just search for mobile app, you could find links to download it, or just search for ivy.co in the Google Play Store or the App Store. For those of you that joined as a beta version of the mobile app, you'll remember that it was just for time tracking and task management. Here you have the ability to view your recent projects. If you have images associated with those projects, you'll be able to identify the projects really easily right over here. You can manage your to-dos from the home screen. You could see all of the to-do list items that you have across your projects in one place, consolidated. You're able to track your time. This is really amazing because it speaks to the desktop version. So if you start a stopwatch on your desktop and you are on the go, you'll be able to see that that stopwatch is still running, click pause, and log it on the spot. One of my favorite features and one of the biggest additions to this mobile app is the ability to add products on the go. And this is something that I think we've been wanting to do for so long. Having gone to market myself in Las Vegas in January, I understand the need for this because it's just kind of overwhelming to take photos of each individual item that you like and then try to remember the vendor that it's associated with afterwards. Here, what's amazing is you're able to add an item and add a product directly to your product library while you're at market, while you're on the go, while you're in the showroom. You could see the image, add all of the product details, just as if you were on the desktop version, and you can access it at a later time. So that's really, really cool and one of my favorite features. Another one is just being able to track your payments and your overview, seeing how much money is outstanding, how much money you've collected to date in your specific projects. And you're also able to see, earlier we talked about billable and non-billable expenses. Here you're able to see a breakdown of your billable and not billable time. So even if you're not going to be submitting a invoice to your client for the time that you're spending on a project, but you want to know where your time is being spent, this is the best way to understand financially where that money is. And attachments. This just came up. I don't remember. I think Jessica asked this question. If you add an attachment from your phone, you're able to see that attachment in your attachment section in the project in Ivy itself. So this is really helpful if you do have some sort of receipt that you want to upload on the go, or if there's anything that you want to do on the go. If you have an attachment like before photos that you store in your attachment section on the desktop and you're on site and you want to pull them up really easily to show your client side by side before and after, you can do the same thing. Those are just a couple of the use cases. Okay, and last thing, which I'm so excited about, is the room measuring tool. This is so awesome because I know iPhone just like came out with a measuring tool as well, but this is specifically to build a floor plan. So this is so easy to use. I downloaded the app. We got like early access to it, and it literally takes less than a minute to create a true floor plan. It's unbelievable. So all you need to do is enable the floor plan feature, and you're going to be measuring from the corner to the corner to the corner to the corner and back. And then you can input any doors, any windows. It is super intuitive and really easy to use. We also have a video in our help center about how to use this. It's a 30-second walkthrough of just literally showing you how easy it is. And you can download that floor plan as a PDF. It takes 5 minutes maximum to go from entering a room to having a PDF of it. It's unbelievable. It's my favorite feature. I actually used it in my room because I'm adding some furniture and I didn't know if it would fit. And so I used it in conjunction with, placing I used it in conjunction with the measurements that I got on the vendor's website of my new dresser. But in any case, that's all we have for today. So I hope that you found progressive invoicing, merging POs, expense tracking, and our mobile app really exciting. I'm super excited about these enhancements and want to just reiterate a couple of things for you. First of all, if you ever have any questions, email support@ivy.co. Check out our help center. Check out our Ivy training link. I'm going to actually send it right over here. It's www.ivy.co/Ivy training, let me see if that will send. And it's a really helpful way to just see any past webinar that I've hosted, deep dives into the product. You can also submit product feedback by emailing your dedicated account manager, support@ivy.co. If you like these types of in-person trainings or in-depth trainings, on November 15th, Thursday, we are having an Ivy Academy in Chicago that is going to take place. It's $4.99 per firm. I could send you the Eventbrite details if you are interested. It's an all-day training session. There's going to be a panel and an opportunity to meet other fellow Ivy designers. We only have 2 spots left, so if you are interested, that is November 15th. And beyond that, I so appreciate you guys tuning in on a Friday with me. It means so much, and I'm always looking for helpful topics that you would like to hear about. So please feel free to send me an email with any suggestions. But thanks again for tuning in, and I hope to meet you all soon.